What's up, guys? Bishops, kings, and pawns in the endgame. Let's take a look. Alright, so first things first. A king and a bishop against a lone king is always a draw. You cannot checkmate with just a bishop. Even if you get the ideal position like this, where you've pushed black's king all the way to the edge of the board, it's just a stalemate because his king is not under attack. So you can't win, always a draw. So with that in mind, if you get a position like this where one player only has a bishop, the other player has an extra pawn and a bishop, the player who's behind, all they have to do is sacrifice their bishop for the pawn, and it's immediately a draw. All right, now the last example was very similar to this, where the player with the bishop was able to sacrifice it for the pawn and just immediately get a draw. But in this case, there's actually a way for white to win. This is something you want to keep in mind. If you have bishops that are on the same color, okay, you're not going to be able to do this if they're opposite color bishops, but if they're on the same color, so mine's on a dark square, his is on a dark square, there's at some point in the game, there's going to be the bishop controlling the square that your pawn would like to go forward to. And if I just move it forward, he just takes it like we saw, and it's a draw. So you don't want to do that. And so if you are able to, in this case, our king is perfectly positioned for this. Sometimes you can't do it, but if you're able to move your bishop to block off the diagonal, you can create an opening for your pawn. So like in this case, if he takes us, then we're going to take, and we have a winning king and pawn ending. And if he moves somewhere else, like over here, we've cleared the diagonal that his bishop was controlling, so now we can push our pawn forward, right? We go here, and next move we get a queen. So be on the lookout for opportunities like that. If you do have a extra pawn and there's bishops that are on the same color, this is how you win, okay? And like I said, you can't always do it. You have to have your king in the right spot. But if you're able to maneuver it like that, you want to remember this technique about blocking off the diagonal with your bishop. That's going to be how you can give yourself a chance to win. All right, now I want to show you a position that when I first saw it, I kind of couldn't believe it. So we've got white here with an extra pawn and an extra bishop. Black has nothing but his king. And the surprising fact about this position is that it is a draw. There is nothing that white can do to win, even though he's up 4 whole points, including a pawn. And the reason has to do with the fact that this bishop is on a white square. And the corner here where the pawn would like to promote is a black square. The fact that those don't match is why this is a draw. So let me show you an example. Let's say I'm white, I'm trying to win, so I'm going to try to go get a queen. Bring my king forward. Black's going to move here. I'm going to push my pawn up. Black's going to move here. And if I push my pawn up immediately, it's a stalemate, right? Like black has nowhere to go. He can't move, it's stalemate. So instead of that, I'm like, all right, let me move my bishop here. Oh, also a stalemate. He can't go there because the bishop, he can't go anywhere else. All right, let's go back. Maybe I'll just kind of waste a move with my bishop. He moves here. Now let me push my pawn. Guess what? He goes back in the corner. And what am I going to do? If I move my king here, again, stalemate. I'm like, all right, let me go back here, give him some space to move, right? So he moves here. If I get a queen, he just takes it. So I'm like, okay, I can't do that just yet. Let me move my king. He's going to go back. I hope you can see the problem. There's never a way for me to get my king or my bishop to cover that square. Bishop can't cover it because it's on the wrong color, and my king can never get there because as soon as I try to get closer, it's a stalemate. So this position will always be a draw as long as black just keeps his king sitting in the corner and goes back and forth. All right, so here's the exact same position, but with one very big difference. Look at the bishop now. It's on the black squares, which also is the corner that the pawn needs to go to promote. And this is very different. So watch how this plays out now. I move my king up, he goes here, move my pawn up, he goes here. And now I go check with the bishop, and my bishop is controlling that corner queening square. So his king moves over, I push the pawn, and still controlling it. So he can't go back there and get a stalemate, he has to go out. Now I get a queen, and I win the game. So that's something to remember about bishop endings. If you have an A or an H pawn, and you have the wrong color bishop, so that means if the bishop doesn't cover the corner square, depending on where the pawn is, it's always going to be a draw. Now, if you have the right color bishop, like in this case, the one that covers the corner, you'll be able to win. All right, so here's the next position I want to show you. And one of the important questions that you'll want to ask yourself when you're playing a bishop ending is, are the bishops on the same color or on opposite colors? And so in this case, white has a bishop that's on white squares, Black has a bishop that's on black squares. What that means is, like in this example, all my pawns, I'm white, all my pawns are on the white squares. This bishop can never attack any of those pawns. He just can't do it, right? Bishops can't ever cover an opposite color. They can only stay on the same color. Same thing for my bishop. I can never attack his pawns. And so even though I have 2 extra pawns, 4 against 2, there's no way I can win, right? Because if I ever try to push this forward, he's just going to take it. And all he has to do is move his bishop back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And my bishop is essentially useless in this position. If I had a knight, it'd be a different story. Or if I had a bishop on the other square, it'd be a different story. But in this case, it's a draw. So like I said, here's an example where I just moved the bishop over 1 square, but that makes a huge difference because now they're on the same color. And so now everything changes because these pawns are actually targets for me. Right now my bishop can actually go after them. Before I couldn't. So like in this position, I could maybe go check, forcing his king out of here. And after he goes back, I could come back here. And guess what? I'm going to win this pawn. So let's say he moves here, capture this pawn. And now I can start to, push these forward and even bring my bishop maybe over here, here, and target this as well. And so I'll be able to win this position because the bishops are on the same color as opposed to opposite color. All right, so here's another position, and the important thing to note here is that we have opposite colored bishops, which a lot of times are drawish. But in this particular case, white has one move that he can play that will win the game. So see if you can find that move. I'll give you a few seconds if you want to pause the video and take some time. What is the one move that white can play to win this position? Well, if you said h5, you are correct. And the reason h5 is the winning move is because it blockades this pawn right here. Okay, that's the key. Let's take a look at black's options, 1 and 2, right? So first of all, if he goes here, now he has 2 pawns that are blockaded on the same color as my bishop. And so we can just go here and then capture them, right? And we've got these defended, so black can't do anything. We're gonna have 2 pawns. We'll be able to push them down and win the game. If we go back, if he captures, that's fine. We take it, and we still have this pawn that we're gonna be able to capture. And then using our king, we can push this forward, and black's gonna have to eventually sacrifice his bishop to stop us from getting a queen. And then we can come over here with our king, take these, and win the game. Okay, so that is why h5 is such an important move. If we go back, suppose that you made the mistake and played g5. Well, now black can just go here, and guess what? We're never going to be able to touch those pawns, right? Like if I bring my king up, black's going to go here. If I bring my king up, he's going to go here. And these guys are, we can't do anything, right? We can go for this. He's just going to sit his king there. Everything's defended, and all black has to do is move his bishop back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it's a draw. So very important point, especially in opposite color bishop endings, is be on the lookout for situations where you can blockade pawns on certain colors. So like you see how all these are blockaded? Well, they're blockaded on the wrong color. He can never take ours, and we can never take his pawns, right? But over here, we had the opportunity to blockade the one on the right colored square. So that's really, really important, especially in opposite color bishops, to keep that in mind. All right, so I've got one final example here. This kind of looks like a position you might have played in a game, right? It's relatively even, and you've got opposite colored bishops, which might lead you to believe it could be a draw. But there's actually one feature about this position that makes it possible for white to win. So what does white play? All right, so the move is actually a4, and c4 kind of accomplishes something similar, but a4 blockades these pawns on black squares, right? This one can't move. And if this one ever tries to move forward, well, we're going to take it. And that next move, probably I'm going to play c4 and just really blockade them. But the reason that's important is because by blockading them on the dark squares, similar to how we saw in the last example, this bishop now can go get the pawns. They're just like sitting ducks. We're just going to go take them. And we also have the advantage that our king is in a much better position to defend our pawns. Right? Like if our king was sitting over here on h1, well, then we kind of have a problem because this bishop's going to come here and start, taking our pawns. But because our king is so much better placed than black's king, we don't have to worry about that. We got him defended. And so that's another important point is, and this is true for any endgames, but whoever has the best placed king is probably going to have better chances to win. And so that's why it's so important to activate your king, either at the center of the board, or in this case, wherever you need it to defend key weaknesses, right? So in this case, this pawn is a weak spot. If black is able to go there and take it, all our pawns are going to fall right after. But our king covers it, so we're good. So after we play a4, black's in trouble. Like, let's say he tries to bring his king over, and I'm going to follow up with c4. He tries to bring his king over. What am I going to do with this bishop? I'm going to start going and taking these pawns. I'm going to play bishop g3. So he goes here. I'm going to go here. He can bring his king over. I'm going to take this. He can go here, but I'm getting at least 2 pawns, right? And, you know, now black's in trouble. He's got to deal with these, and then I could probably start bringing my king over here, maybe take these. This is going to be a win for white because we were able to get the pawns, which all started from blockading them with our pawns. Okay, so very similar example, but this is really, bishop endings are relatively straightforward. This is the kind of stuff that you have to pay attention to. All right, guys, hope you learned something. Don't forget to leave a comment, ask a question. As always, thanks for watching. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.